this evening, and she is an advocate for NVR. And Jeanette's going to talk about things like how communication and relationship building is really important when addressing challenging behaviours, and things like therapeutic interventions. So without further ado, I will, rather than introduce her, I will let her introduce herself, and I will hand over to Jeanette. So good evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. NVR is one of those terms which nobody knows what it stands for unless you know. It is nonviolent resistance. Resistance being a huge part of this. Very quickly, sort of like, well, it stems from the political movement with Gandhi, sort of like that sort of, we are going to resist the behaviour that we are seeing, and we're going to do it peacefully. So that is what we're trying to do, and encourage parents and carers and other professionals involved with children to be that very resistant, caring, kind, but absolute persist with resisting the violence. My name is Jeanette. I'm a child psychologist. My PhD was in emotion, so that's where I'll start. That is my into NVR actually, because I think emotion, obviously, all relationships are hugely important. And then, so I'm an NVR practitioner, which we come in many shapes and forms. It is an accredited practice. However, should you in future look up things, I will at the end just give you an email address and guides to where to go to search out NVR practitioners in your area. However, I will ask you to be aware of there are different levels of practitioners. So I'm the highest level you can get to. Some will be a level 1, which absolutely they will know the strategies, they will know how to practice, absolutely allowed to practice. However, if you are dealing with more traumatic and difficult family stories, I would absolutely advise you to seek an accredited practitioner. So without further ado, I'm going to start on emotions. So we have emotions, we have feelings, and there is a difference. And that is actually really, really relevant when we are talking about what we perceive as aggression in children. So emotions, very basically, and I'm hoping that I'm not repeating something that you already really know well, starts in the back of your brain. It's the very, very first thing that gets developed in the brain. All living organisms have the potential to have emotions, because emotion is actually it's very basically, it's how we survive. So we have culturally sort of agreed on some kind of basic emotions, which is fear, happiness, anger, disgust, surprise, and sadness, because that kind of emotions is what keeps us alive. We see our brain perceive something in our environment, and we react appropriately to it in order to survive. With that survival, for the human race comes that what we have called social emotions, and that we in our culture saying we should also be able to have a social regulation and an emotional regulation. And that brings us into things like shame and embarrassment and guilt, which is really key also to have the differences between it, because like in essence, this is just words. All emotions is just the emotions in themselves is a physiological response to the environment so we can survive. So your heart rate will go up, you will start some skin responses to that, your adrenaline will go, and all the chemical reactions in your body will go to wherever in your body that they're needed the most. So that might be your legs, it might be to your hands, it might be your face, it might be wherever in the body it's needed for your survival. Shame, embarrassment, and guilt are names we give to some of the feelings that we should have in a regulated cultural society. Because if we don't have those regulations, if we say go into a shop and steal something and we don't feel embarrassed or guilty or shame once we get discovered, or even if we didn't get discovered, well, then there is no social regulation to make us stop doing that behavior. So in a culture, it is really key that we have agreed on certain concept to to enable us to have morals and value within that society. Now, they will differ according to society. If you are in a little tribe where you don't have much outside interaction, these cultural differences will really be visible, as opposed to if you live in a city or even a small village. So there are so many things that we have to learn as a child, when actually the reality of it is that what we call feelings and emotion and interchangeably talk about is something that's happening inside of the body, and the brain is doing it automatically. And then these feelings that we have, so when I feel my heart rate goes up, when I can feel, oh, I start to sweat a bit, or I blush a bit, or I go really pale, I have to look in my social context, make sense of why I have these feelings inside, react appropriately within that social context. So if I'm in say amusement park and I'm on the roller coaster and I look around and I see everybody laughing, then those are all the signs that, well, it must be fun. Whereas if I'm in a dark cellar and the door closed behind me up the stairs and I don't think there's anyone but you, I'm not really sure, then my heart rate is telling me, oh, I should probably be a little bit afraid. Or if the person that I'm with, if I'm a child, for instance, and the adult person I'm with starts, oh my God, and get all really scared when the door closed, well, then me as a child, I'm going to look at that reaction and say, oh, there's cause for concern. I must be worried. This feeling I have, that wasn't a fun, oh, look, oh, the light went out. That was a feeling of fear. And this is really, really, really difficult. And it becomes, for some children, actually more difficult if there has been past trauma. I will never assume, but I am assuming that all of you listening will know about the childhood ACEs and all that. And obviously, if any of those are involved in the children you are dealing with, then there is a real possibility that the children that you are seeing may not always be reacting appropriately to what you would expect a child to react to in that situation. And it may be because underlying their current behavior, it has some kind of childhood trauma. And if that is the case, then when a child gets into a situation that they can't, the brain simply cannot manage it, and it gets overloaded and it activates fight and flight. So in order to survive, we really are limited by our brain. Beautiful as it is, it in the emotional brain, the back brain, only really have three options for survival. We can fight, we can flee, or we can freeze. So in most cases, for a lot of children, for some children, not the case, but for most children, actually the two most often responses you see or the fight or flight. The freeze you may experience as a professional or in care of a child. If you see someone withdrawing, that will be the freeze sort of activating. But I've got the picture of the cat here because to me, this is what illustrates what actually happens for us as humans as well when we're in that situation. The cat here is sort of like, it's prepared, it's got itself bigger, it's a little bit curious because it's still a bit unsure of what's going on. And actually that is a representation of what for many children, when they're learning to figure out what's going on inside of them, try to put that into the wider context of the environment they're currently in, they are in that position. And then what we as adults may read in that child's behavior is that it's a fighting behavior. We don't necessarily see the anxiety behind it. We don't necessarily see the, oh, I really, really want to run away right now, but I can't because maybe I'm in a place where I can't run away. Maybe someone is holding on to me, so I literally can't hold away. I can't just flop on the floor because that seems like not a good option either. And then the only thing I can do actually in this moment when my body is doing all these things and I get really, really anxious and all that is fight. And that will obviously be perceived as this child is being very aggressive. When actually, potentially, yes, they might be kicking, yes, they might be screaming, they might be even hitting you, they might be throwing things at you. However, that may, in some cases, be because there was no other option for them in that moment. So it wasn't calculated with intent, I'm going to destroy the entire playhouse. It was oh my God, I don't know what to do. And I'm actually really, really frightened. And I'm going to fight my way out of here. So with that, it's also just very, very quickly, as I'm sure you already know, that how we learn is by pattern. How we make sense of things, how we remember things, how we get new knowledge, and all that is simply by making sense of it through a pattern. So we know what Christmas looks like because every year this is what we do. We put out the fine china and we put a turkey on the table, and we do it in some families. We do it differently. They have beef and all that. But for a particular child, we say, well, okay, this is what Christmas looks like. We get presents. We have this kind of food. Or my aunts and uncle comes in. And then again, because of the patterns and then because of the emotions, if you put those two together, and because again, it is really, really difficult as a child to learn these different things. And again, sometimes with some children, the things they're learning may not be consistent. It may be that they also have to learn that's like, well, when I'm at friends, Christmas looks like this. When I'm at dad's, Christmas looks like that. When I'm at mum's, it looks like this. So all these different things, making the patterns fit into how the brain naturally learns, also become a little bit difficult and may take longer. And that, of course, will have its own problems, because then we have the adult expectations to, well, you should know this by now. Come on, you're 5 years old. You've had 5 Christmases already. Why don't you know that we should wait to open the presents until everybody's down, or whichever way it is? And with that, there's a bit of unsafe feeling for that child. If they're not entirely sure about the pattern, they will seek to go to a pattern they know. And then for some children, unfortunately, the pattern they know is what we see as the aggressive pattern. It's the tantrum, it's a shouting, it's a screaming, it's a kicking, because they don't know what's happening. They don't know what the situation is going to be. And that is a really uncomfortable and potentially frightening position for a child to be in. Now, back to the brain, if there then are also some underlying, whether it's trauma, additional needs, or anything, underlying issues with learning or memories, all these things just become a little bit more difficult. And it's that combination of, there is expectations to my child at this age to have reached these milestones, to be able to comprehend that, oh, we're internalizing thoughts now. We're not saying this lady is fat. We're not saying these things out loud anymore because you're this age. We should be able to sit quietly and still at the school because we have learned that we're now a student and we have to be quiet and listen to the teacher. All these things, all these expectations is because of a pattern. But if that pattern gets disrupted, then the survival instinct once again kicks in, and the child will behave not according to expectations, but according to them for survive. So fight, flee, or freeze. That was very good. So NVR. This is an approach which, for me personally, when I first found NVR, it was one of those things which just inherently made sense, because there's a lot of, as you know, there's a lot of different approaches to parenting out there, and you should be doing this one year and that and the next year and all that, and sometimes you get a little bit, oh my God, there's so much that I have to do as a parent or a carer or professional involved with children. And then you see the challenging behavior, and then within traditional parenting, we are punishing or rewarding, because this is what, and it does work for a lot of children, it absolutely works. But for some children, it really doesn't. And I'm guessing that some of your challenges will be to see, well, for some of the children that you are involved with, and you have a reward chart, or you have a, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to have to take 10 minutes off your playtime, or whichever scheme we're using, which is absolutely fine when it works. The challenge comes to us like, well, if you have a child where it repeatedly does not work, then the persisting with the punishment, persisting with the reward chart and all that isn't going to change the behavior, because if you have done it up until a certain point and it didn't work, it won't. NVR, however, very possibly will. And it will because it is working with the challenging behavior instead of putting it to the individual and saying, well, you must stop doing these things. You must learn to manage these difficult situations, or else, or if you do manage to control yourself or regulate your emotions in an appropriate manner in these difficult situations, you get this thing that you really, really want. And the problem with rewards is that it has to be something, of course, that the child really, really wants. If it's something they really, really want, emotions are involved again, because that's why it works. It's a motivation. So if my emotions are involved, my heart rate will go up. I will start to get a little bit excited. But I also might start to get a little bit anxious, because what if I can't manage this really difficult situation? I couldn't manage it yesterday, but if I can manage it today, I get 10 minutes golden time. So I really want this, but my emotions are going up and up and up, and I feel now quite escalated, which is, for me, as a child, learning to manage my emotions, the sure start of survival instinct kicking in, because the body is not reading it as excitement or being nervous or anything. The body is reading it as a lot of physiological responses to a situation. The body does not care whether it's exciting, fun, sad, whatever. The body just does what the body does, and then the brain does what the brain does, and that is the survival instinct. So within we're then going in, so we're surrounding the child with caring adults. We are increasing the appropriate adult present. Now that might be a carer, it might be the parent, it might be anyone that they are in the child's vicinity. We are trying to look at recognizing the escalation patterns. This is sort of like, this is step one in NVR, because if we as adults think about it, when we are stood in the situation with a child who is escalated, we would like to say that we keep our cool, but inside of us, we might have learned to say the right words, but inside of us, we're going, oh my God, this is the 10th time I've told you this. Why do you not get it? And now I have to go through all these consequences, and I might have to reinforce, or I have to call a parent, or I have to, whatever it is that I have to do. So I get a little bit annoyed. And because my body is also just a body and a brain, my escalation will go up, my heart rate will go up. I will start to sweat a bit, I'll start to maybe get a bit of a red face. Now, even the best of us, even the most patient of us, will have the point where we say, well, okay, my tone of voice might now get a little bit icier, a little bit colder. And it's much as we practice and we are kind and we are doing all the right things with the child, we can't stop how we're feeling. It's impossible. So therefore, we are asking our parents and carers to look at their own feelings within the escalations. And then we give them strategies for, well, how do you walk away? At what point are you saying, actually, this is going nowhere? So we give them strategies to say, well, okay, in that moment, am I really better off going through with the punishment and the escalation, so I can, whether it's winning or whatever it is that is a motivation at that point, or can I walk away? And we're giving them good reasons and good strategies to, well, what does that look like? Within that as well, within NVR is sort of like, we have, it's a two-way thing. It's on one side, it's this behavior, the violent behavior, not the misbehaving and being a bit naughty, but the violence, the kicking, the screaming, the hurting other people, hurting yourself. That's not okay. And on the other hand is love and kindness and care. That it does not matter what you do, I am not going anywhere. However, because of, we might have said these things quite a lot of times, and sometimes our behavior, even though we're not recognizing it or not doing it with intent, sometimes something in our person, in our interaction with the child, have shown them otherwise, and therefore when we say a word that I love you, they don't necessarily trust us, and therefore words don't matter. So we are looking at the connection between the adult and the child within the relationship, and within that is also managing guilt and shame, because we as adults, our purpose of whether it's a parent or carer or whatever role we have involved with the child is to help this child become a responsible adult. And within that, there's certain things that we want them to do. And if they're not doing them, then we feel a bit ashamed, and we feel those things. And sometimes we are in traditional parenting using that to try and put that shame and the guilt on the child so they can understand that this is wrong, this is not what you should do. However, sometimes that will come across as shameful to the child. And there's a huge difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is a good thing. Guilt is the one, like we talked about before, sort of shoplifting. You go into the shop, you take something, you don't pay for it, you feel guilty, you should feel guilty. You get caught, you feel probably shamed and guilty. So you won't do it again because it's wrong. Shame, however, shame is on me. You're naughty, you're a bad person, you're whatever it is, the words that get said, they stick. And I know, thankfully, in more modern day parenting, it is very much about we're not necessarily looking at the child, we're looking at their efforts, we're being very careful about how we formulate things. And this is why, because if we are putting it on them, well, there's nothing I can do with it then as a child. This is me. I am naughty. If my behavior is naughty, or if my behavior is not okay, well, that I can do something about. There is hope. And that sometimes that's all we need to give these children we were working with is hope. That hope that I can change, hope that this pattern that I'm into, even though I don't particularly like it, it's safe because it's what I know. So by not being shamed, you're giving the child hope that this can actually change. It's not you, it's the behavior. It's not you, it's the pattern that we're in. And we are in because I am doing the pattern with you. So NVR really, it's about giving some control and empower the carers and the professionals and the adults in the child's life. Because sometimes we're looking at this little person in front of us and they're being very aggressive and very angry, and we don't know how to stop them because we've done everything. We've done the rewards, we've done the punishment, and it didn't work. It just made it worse. So we feel helpless. In some cases, when it is very violent, we talk about block care. We go through the motions of we are safe, keeping our children safe. However, we disconnect because it's too much. Our own survival instinct kicks in at that point. I cannot connect with this child. I cannot allow my feelings to be too involved with this child because I won't survive it myself. So we care, but we do it without feeling, and that's what blocked care will be. So some of the strategies we're giving to carers and parents are prioritizing areas to assist. Again, it's sort of like when we see parents, it is because their child is being violent. And with violence, we mean is like, well, it's violence to others, it's self-harming, it's not leaving the house potentially, is that very sort of anxiety-based thing. And at that point, we're asking the parents to say, well, all the behaviors that you find that you have as an adult, a responsible adult, to say something about. If you write that list down, what were you talking about? Brushing the teeth, being properly dressed, eating the dinner, eating the right dinner, eating it nicely, sitting at the table, using knife, for all the things. And actually, if we're then looking at all that, that's quite a lot of things we have to say in a day. And if we have to say something about all of them, we are ending up talking an awful lot. And it gets lost because in the course of maybe 1 hour, take the morning routine, we've all been there. It's like, it's not funny. However, we get, come on, get up. I've woken you up already. It's like, you really do need to get out of bed or we're going to be late. Must brush your teeth, maybe have a shower, get dressed. No, not in that dress, this dress because you're going to school. Do this, have some breakfast. Don't kick your brother. Oh, you spilled the milk. You now need to go and get changed into another top, stop hitting your sister, right, where's your school bag, do all this, do all that. So don't kick your brother, stop hitting your sister. Well, that got missed in all the other things that we have to say. So when we get to the violent behavior, this is actually all we need to worry about right now. Not for forever, but right now, because that is not okay. The toothbrushing, how they eat their breakfast and in what order and in what chair, or whether they use a fork or a spoon, at that point, utterly does not matter. It matters that they hit their sister. So we obviously, within that, then we give tools and strategies how to resist it, how to get support, how to get the right support, because again, for some families, the support that they have potentially, and quite often, is a support where you say, well, in my day, I would not have accepted that behavior from my children. In my day, I would not have spoken to my mom like that. You must be a bad parent. Here we go, shaming again. So this parent with this child who's not managing is also feeling that, well, I'm not managing, and I must be a bad parent because look at my child. So we're looking at empowering the parent to be the parent they want to be, not about controlling the child, because it's not about controlling other people, it's about controlling what you can control, which is you. And then we're focusing on reconnecting and repairing the relationship within the family, within the child and the parent. And in order to do that, we're also looking at unmet needs within the child, which is quite often actually some of the things which the parents don't see because you've come into such a highly stressful situation. So once we are into the block care and block trust, it's a two-way thing. So I'm just going to read these quotes out. Stress can lead to the development of mutually defensive feelings between a parent and a child. When the child mirrors the parent's stress and then exhibits signs of his or her own distress that the parent in turn mirrors back. So you have that sort of like, well, children are learning, they're learning from us. And if we're stressed, well, they're looking at us like, oh my God, my safe person is really stressed. And then they've got all these, again, emotions in the body that they're trying to make sense of. They're looking to the parents like, what are they doing in this moment? Oh, my mum is shouting. Well, I better shout too. So when parents experience block care, they often focus very narrowly on the behavioral difficulties that they're having with their children. They often hope just to fix the problem without making sense of the relational difficulties they're experiencing with their children. So a lot of the parents we see is sort of like, well, if they could just stop doing this, we would all be good. However, sometimes they can't just stop doing that. And no, you won't all be good, because actually the relationship at that point has broken down both ways. So parent looking at the child and say, I cannot believe how much my child hates me, and that makes me really sad, and I can't cope with that. So they withdraw. The child sees this withdrawal and say, oh, I'm not sure I can trust this person, because it's no longer unconditional love I'm seeing. It's conditional on my behavior in something that I'm really struggling with. So they start not trusting the adult. And then we're on this spiral of a pattern, which is really not beneficial for both of them. Now, because the child is a child and the adult is an adult, it is on the adult to fix this. Not fix the problem, as in fix the child, fix their relationship. Because huge part of the problems for the child is, if I can't trust the adult that I'm with, then I can't trust myself, because I'm still learning and I'm still trying to make sense of all the things going on. And the adult is having these expectations to me, which I can't manage it. And I also can't go to them and tell them that I can't manage them, because I'm only little and I don't have the words for it. So they act out. And that leads to stress in the parents, stress in the children, which is really, really a bad situation to get in. Because if we're looking just pause for a moment and try to, I'm a great fan of body scans, because of like, well, how else do you know what you feel like? Because then it's not about being in tune with yourself or anything. It's like body's about, so, oh, okay, if I can't breathe because I'm so tied up, it's sort of like, well, this is probably not the best time then to go and tell my child that, oh my God, really, again, look at your room. So I need to do something about that, because otherwise the stress is going on. And if stress is going on, actually, much as it's But in a short-term situation like an exam, perfect to have stress because it enhances your memory, and then it sends again all these body chemicals out in your body, and it's fantastic short-term. However, long-term, really bad, because all the chemicals in your body and then goes into your brain. And once that happens, we're back in this basic brain in survival mode. And for this quote here, Fender, huge fan of him. If you haven't read him already, absolutely go and find him. It's a very insightful person to trauma. And he says, if an organism is stuck in survival mode, its energies are focused on fighting off unseen enemies, which leave no room for nurture, care, and love. For us humans, that means that as long as the mind is defending itself against invisible assaults, our closest bonds are threatened, along with our ability to imagine, plan, play, learn, and pay attention to other people's needs. This, of course, if you are an adult caring for a child, isn't a great place to be. Because if we can't plan and imagine and learn and pay attention to other people's needs, well, then that takes us into this blocked care again. We may keep them safe and warm and fed and clothed and get them to wherever they need to be on time. However, we're not really feeling it. And that's one of the key things we have in NVR is parental presence. Like, what does that look like? How do you get it back if you lost it? And what's an appropriate level? Because sometimes we're way too high and sometimes we're way too low. So how do we find that? And if we're then facing a child who has traumatized us because of their violence, or traumatized us because we are feeling that it's their fault that I can't cope as a parent, and that other people are looking at me and say, oh my God, really, you're just the worst parent in the world. Well, then it's like we're blaming this child, and then it all gets worse. And it's almost impossible not to say, well, if it wasn't for this child's behavior, I would be a good parent. So we're just like, okay, so if it wasn't for the challenges that you are facing, what kind of parent would you want to be? And then we can give you tools to become that parent, because it shouldn't be dependent on the child's behavior. Because if it is, then we're back into traditional parenting with rewards and punishment. Well, I'll only take you out for lunch if you've been good, not because, well, I want to take you out for lunch because why not? Let's go to the park. But if you're behaving like that, we're not going to the park. Oh, let's go to the park. It's a sunny day. So it's about saying, well, how many of the things that we are doing because we are in the mindset of, do they deserve this? Or are we in the mindset of, well, I'm doing this because I love this kid and actually it might be really nice. So we have a number of de-escalation strategies, which is, of course, really, really important. And we are looking inward to say, well, okay, so what's going on with me in all this? And it is absolutely key to NVR. So we will be looking at de-escalation in emergency situations, because it's all very well that we have all these long-term strategies. NVR is a long-term. It's not a quick fix. It's not a fix at all. It's about the relationships and the interactions between not just parent-child or adult-child. It is for all people. But of course, sometimes there is a situation where it's here now and I have to react to the situation and I can't plan for it-ish. However, most situations with children, actually, you can plan for, and therefore you can have a plan A, B, and C, and therefore you can de-escalate even in a situation that you wasn't anticipating, because their children is sort of like most of the situation that an adult will be facing is very similar, and therefore if they're similar, we can plan for it. Say, well, okay, this always happens, so let's do this instead. I tend to not cope with my child at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, actually, let's change what's happening for me at 2:30, so I can change what's happening with me at 3 o'clock when I see my child. De-escalation definitely is coming away from rewards and punishment, as we talked about. It's not about winning or losing. Actually, again, is sort of like, well, if it is that, well, I'm the adult, I should be right. Well, actually, you're the adult. So sometimes things aren't as they seem, and we have to look at what is behind this behavior, because they are potentially behaving in this manner because they're not managing whatever situation you as the adult have put them in. So the win long term is a better relationship with your child. That is a non-violent relationship. This is very much dependent on supporters. Again, it's a really, really big thing in NVR, is because of the perception we have of what other people are thinking about us as a parent. Is sort of like, well, if we are encouraging other people in our lives to say, actually, I'm doing this thing now, and it would be great if you could support me in this. So sometimes when it looks like I'm doing nothing, I am actually doing something. I am helping my child manage a really difficult situation for them. We have some things that we call rule of one. So if you said it once and there is no hearing impairment in the child, and you are pretty certain that they have heard you, not in the typical parenting way, but look at me so I can see that you're listening to me. But because some children, that does not work for them, then it really gets them anxious. But you have said it out loud. There wasn't massively music playing and all that. So you have said it. You do not need to repeat it, because then we go into this again. It's like, well, they can't hear it because they have switched off a long time ago. We have what we call autopilot statement. It's sort of like, well, where we look at tone of voice and things that we say, so we don't engage in the argument, because we don't have to. It's our choice whether we want to escalate in an argument with them, or whether we want to step back, not ignore them, just say an autopilot statement, and then walk away, distract them, go and got chocolate cake in the kitchen, let's go and see that instead, because we're not rewarding the bad behavior, we're distracting, we're de-escalating. Avoid adding strong emotions to the situation. Again, this is that your own body scan is sort of like, am I getting a little bit frustrated here? I think I'm just going to stop, go and make a cup of tea, and then I'll come back to you in 5 minutes time, but I just need to calm down a little bit. If we can, humor is a great way out of it. Not everybody's able to. I'm one of them. Sort of like, my sense of humor is definitely not something to be used in that situation to divert or distract. But for other people, it's quite natural, and they're naturally funny. So actually, if you are one of them, absolutely use it. Think about your own body structure, body posture, your tone of language. Again, most of you, I'm sure, will do this. Like you'll go down the children's level and soften your tone of voice and all that. However, when we are in the escalating situation and we are in the traditional, I must win this argument, or I'm always right, or why don't you listen to me, our voices tend to be a little bit more powerful than we potentially realize. Using start rather than stop request, and me rather than you, is sort of like, well, I'm going to start tidying up the room. It'd be lovely if you would help me, rather than, can you tidy this mess up? Or can you stop doing this? And all that's like, well, I'm going to start dinner. Come and join me if you want, rather than, can you stop doing this noise now and go and sit down at the table? And then stay curious, sort of like, because we don't know what our children are thinking, and sometimes we are assuming that they are thinking this, or that they're doing this because of some reason. And actually, sometimes it's okay to ask the question, say, well, I wonder if you might be feeling a little bit frustrated with your lace that on your shoe. I wonder if you would like some help, or why don't I sit here and I do my lace and you can copy it or something, rather than, oh, why are you still on that lace, or why didn't you ask for help? So just sort of changing how we talk to them and how we speak to them, and how we phrase the question sometimes helps. Really, really key for why I strongly believe that NVR can work where other strategies fail is, firstly, as I said in the beginning, it's sort of like, well, if you've been doing this for a while and it doesn't seem to work well, the normal traditional parenting strategy is likely not to. However, NVR can work because the principle, it's based on equality and non-violence. We're not going in with a point of view that I am better or more than you because I'm the adult. I'm not going in as in a relationship with my child or any other person to say, well, I know better. I do know better. I have 50 years experience as opposed to my own one, sort of. However, it's sort of like, well, sometimes actually they don't know better because, well, they're living in this kind of world, growing up in this world, and I didn't. So sometimes actually they know better. So if we level the approach out a little bit, then actually we're going in with different statement. It will by nature be different statements and approaches we're taking with the children, because we're not going in up here with, you should respect me because I'm your mum. You should respect me because I'm adult. You should do this because I say so. We're going in here. So we're really nice if you could understand my values, and I'll show you how, because I am using my own values as well. And that gives me control, because I'm not going over here where the child values are completely offhand at the moment. I'm sticking to mine, and mine are non-violent. Mine is, I'm going to remain calm. I'm actually not going to enter this argument. I'm not going to start shouting at you because for the 10th time you really did not tidy up your room, or whatever it is that they did. So I can control me. And that's the only thing I can and should control. And by my actions changing, the children's actions will be changing too, because they learn the new pattern. I'm no longer forcing them into this pattern where we're going this way. I am going that way, and then they will follow me. So NVR is about gaining authority and influence the choices the child makes through building the relationship and connecting with the child. So there's a lot of connective gestures that we're talking to the parents about, and how can you, when actually potentially, I know you work with younger children, but the trauma can be the same. You have a little person stood in front of you screaming, I absolutely hate you, the worst mom in the world, I wish I was never born, I wish you were never born, or whatever it is that they say. It hurts. And as I said before, it's like, well, at some point you will, to preserve yourself, you will disconnect, and that connection has to be rebuilt, and that takes patience and time and effort on the adult's part. And by using the strategies and changing what the adults are doing, they are not only learning to regulate their own emotions in those situations, they're also modeling to the children that there is changes possible, and how we can act in those difficult situations. So it's not about saying, well, you must do all this. It's about saying, well, actually, why don't we do this together? So that is it for today. I'm more than happy if there is any questions. I believe that you will get this presentation out. There are the website and the email address for the for one of the organisations that do NVR in the UK. They will be able to answer questions. If you have any questions about where do I find an NVR practitioner, where do I find a group, where I live, and yeah, look at the website. There's lots of information and material you can read. I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeanette. That was absolutely amazing. Learned absolutely loads from it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You have, I think actually you probably answered it, but during the session, Gigi asked, what can we do when a child is violent with the nanny, e.g. being aggressive when you try to play, to teach, to take care of her?
So potentially in that situation, it is about looking at what the child's need is at that moment. Is there a pattern? Is it what they play? Is it how the nanny is approaching the situation? For some children, it's that, I mean, depending on for some children, if there is an underlying diagnosis of anything, literally some children have an issue with, it's her earrings. When they get a bit older, they will say, well, I didn't like her earrings. That's why I didn't want to talk to her. So if there are underlying issues, it can really be as simple as like, well, try and put your hair up, or try and wear a different color top. But it is the de-escalation. It's what is the nanny's response in that moment. What can she do is she saying, well, you must, well, come on, this is fun. Even though we as adults are saying, well, actually, I'm being really nice, I'm trying to come and play with me. But actually, if the child at that moment don't want to play that, it becomes a situation where, well, I don't want to, but I can't tell you that because I'm only little and I don't have the words for it. Or I might tell you that, but then you say, oh, don't be silly, this is a fun game. Because I, as a nanny, have this responsibility to teach you X, Y, and Z, and this is part of the curriculum for today. So we must tick this box. But actually it's about saying, well, okay, so what is the point of the game? Can we do it in a different way? Can we use different words? Can we use different colors? Can we change the pattern in that moment? is there something else you can say? Does she keep repeating herself, which is then escalatory for the child in that situation?
Perfect, thank you. And we just have one in the questions and answers box which says, is non-violent communication a component of non-violent resistance?
That is a very good question. Well, it's not the same. It is a variation, I would like to say, what's the right word for it. But no, it's absolutely not the same, and it's not it's a different school of thought. It's not dissimilar, obviously, because it's non-violent, but it is a different, it's how you look at communication, where within NVR we're looking at a much wider picture, because it's a wraparound thing about the child. It's about getting everybody in the child's world involved in the approach of the prioritizing behavior, the de-escalation, whereas communication, non-violent communication is a bit more singular, as in, yes, how we talk to the child and about the child and approach the child is absolutely key within NVR, but the non-violent communication is sort of like this little bit over here, whereas NVR is the all around the person.
Thank you very much for joining us. Loads of information there. So like Jeanette mentioned, you will be emailed this presentation, so give you another chance to go through the slides and some of Jeanette's answers. Or someone's just commented and put, oh, that's clarified it for me. Thank you, Jeanette and Lorna. So that's good. And Judy,
just with that presence. So with parental presence is absolutely key, and I would absolutely advise anyone here to go and look at NVR parental presence, because it's sometimes the presence isn't physical, and sometimes the physical presence for a child is too much. So it's about, well, how can I be present? Or even for some of you, where it's like, well, okay, so they might be suffering from separation anxiety. So how can you help mom and dad in that moment to be present even though they're away? So it's little things that they can do as parents to say, well, okay, I'm not right with you, I'm not physically in the same room with you, maybe not even the same country as you, however, I am actually present with you in a different way. So absolutely, parental presence is a fantastic thing to look into as well.
Thank you, brilliant, that's great. So like I say, so much amazing information. Thank you ever so much. Thank you to everybody who joined us. A massive thank you to Jeanette. Really, really enjoyed that. So thank you.
Thank you.